We're wrapping up our ecosystems unit, so let's take a look at our vocabulary prior to taking our test. The term ecosystem is a reference to all the biotic and abiotic factors, all the living and non-living things in the environment. In your STEM, eco means environment. So the biotic and abiotic things that interact, the living and non-living things that interact together, are going to make up the ecosystem. The term biotic refers to something being alive, and that's generally going to be plants and animals, fungi, insects, things like that. If it's not alive, it's going to be considered abiotic. Your STEM bio means life and a means without. So abiotic means without life, and those are going to be things that are in the environment that are going to impact the living organism. So abiotic factors will be things like water, soil, air, sunlight. Animal, bacteria, protists, plants are going to be biotic organisms, but also biotic things will include symbiotic relationships, things like parasitism, also predation, the interaction between predator and prey. So how those living organisms interact are also going to be falling within the biotic factor category. Abiotic examples are going to be rocks, temperature, water, and air. So those things are not alive, and they do impact living organisms though. Evaporation, condensation, and precipitation are the three main steps of the water cycle. So the water cycle is going to be referring to how water is transferring through the atmosphere and down to Earth's surface and within the Earth. So evaporation, condensation, precipitation are going to be considered the three main steps, although there are other parts of the water cycle like runoff and transpiration, collection. So those things are a part of the water cycle as well. Producers are going to be autotrophs, and those are the things that generally are going to go through photosynthesis and produce their own food, and that's going to be the largest mass of living matter in the ecosystem. So if we were to look at your trophic level pyramids, they would be at the bottom. It would be the largest section, the base of the pyramid. Terrestrial is going to be referring to land. Terre, T-E-R-R, refers to earth or land. Aquatic, aqua, means water. And so an aquatic habitat is going to be a habitat that is in the water. Mutualism. Mutual means it's a reference to both parties being involved. So mutualism is going to be a symbiotic relationship where both organisms benefit. And an example of that is going to be flowers and bees. So bees will be able to kind of get onto the flowers and collect the pollen, and they use that nectar in order to make food. And that also is going to be beneficial to flowers because it will allow the bees to pollinate the flowers. And so the bee will end up getting some of that pollen on the little hairs on its body, and those pollen particles will fall off as the bee flies to another flower, and that will pollinate the next flower. Plants and algae are going to be producers. They're autotrophs, so they'll make their own food through photosynthesis. Community is going to be reference to all the living organisms that are in the area. So all the different types of living things in the area. So in this example, in this picture, it's going to be including the birds, zebra, lion, so all those things that are going to be interacting. So that's going to include the animals and plants, fungi, bacteria, anything that's alive in that area. The number of animals that can live in habitat is determined by the amount of resources available, like the amount of food available or the amount of water. Population is going to be a reference to a specific species. So when we're looking at a population, we're looking at the individuals of that species that live in the same area. So for example, all the grasshoppers in Kings Mountain, or all the people in a specific city. So population is going to be referring to just one species in particular. Photosynthesis is a process by which living organisms that are photosynthetic will produce their own food. And so that's going to apply to producers and autotrophs, such as plants and algae. And the process of photosynthesis is going to be taking in light energy from the sun, as well as carbon dioxide and water in order to produce glucose. Plants are going to take in carbon dioxide, so they are taking in carbon specifically from the carbon cycle. So they're taking in that carbon dioxide, and they'll use the carbon dioxide in order to go through photosynthesis. So this is a reference to the oxygen cycle. Plants will release oxygen, and that is going to be what animals will breathe in. And so humans are also considered animals. So humans will breathe in that oxygen as well. Parasitism is a type of symbiotic relationship, and this is a relationship where two organisms are going to be interacting, but one of the organisms is going to benefit, and that would be the parasite, and the other organism is going to get harmed, and that's going to be the host. Commensalism is a specific type of symbiotic relationship where one of the organisms is going to benefit and the other one doesn't care. The other one doesn't get harmed and it is not helped. So sharks and remora fish are a good example. So when sharks are eating food, they will drop all kinds of particles from their mouth as they are eating and shredding meat, basically flesh. And so those particles are going to go into the water, and certain types of fish will swim beside of the sharks in order to catch those particles. So the shark doesn't care that the fish are there. They're too small anyway, and they're not going to be worth the shark's energy in order to try to eat. And those small remora fish are going to benefit because they are going to be able to get food without expending any energy. Mutualism is another type of symbiotic relationship, and this is where both of those organisms are going to benefit. So the bird here and the alligator are both going to be benefiting from this relationship. The bird because it's getting food, and the alligator because the bird is picking stuff, gunk, from around its teeth. Predators are going to be animals that will attack and kill other animals in order to eat them. So birds of prey, raptors are a good example. Limiting factors are going to be any biotic or abiotic factor that controls the number of individuals in a population. So biotic and abiotic factors are going to be able to limit a population when they are in action. Respiration is the process of cellular respiration, which occurs in the mitochondria. And so it's going to be removing oxygen from the air and then adding carbon dioxide into the air. So cellular respiration is going to occur in the mitochondria. And this also is going to be the process that is responsible for generating energy in animals. Photosynthesis is going to remove carbon dioxide from the air. So carbon dioxide is going to be important for plants for photosynthesis. In the process of photosynthesis and cellular respiration are opposite processes because photosynthesis is going to release the oxygen into the air, and then the cellular respiration is going to take in the oxygen, and cellular respiration will release the carbon dioxide that's necessary for plants for photosynthesis. Bacteria are capable of nitrogen fixation. This is a reference to the nitrogen cycle. So there are some bacteria, specifically rhizobia bacteria, for example, that will live in the root nodules on specific types of plants or legumes, and they are capable of nitrogen fixation, which means that they will take in the nitrogen, the N2 from the atmosphere, and they convert that into ammonia, which can be used by plants. Ticks are an example of parasites because they are going to feed off of the host, and so the tick will benefit by getting blood, by getting that nutrition, and that also is going to cause harm to the host. If the prey population increases, the predator population would also increase. This is the predator-prey graph, and the predator and the prey populations are going to act in a similar manner. So if the prey population increases, that means the predator population is going to increase also because there's more to eat. But as the predator population increases, that means they're going to be eating more, and so that prey population will eventually begin decreasing causing the predator population to decrease as well because there won't be as much food to eat. Most energy for living things is going to come from the sun. The sun is going to be the source, either directly or indirectly, for energy for most living things. If you reduce the amount of food that's available, some animals are going to die. And that's just going to be a natural part of the food web. So if you are removing one of the living organisms or one of the living matter from the food web, then something isn't going to have the food that it needs. And that's going to be kind of a domino effect within the food web. Kudzu is an example of a plant that is sort of parasitic, and it's very commonly found in our area, and it sort of wraps around trees and basically anything in order to get higher towards the sun, and so it's going to deprive those plants that it may be covering from having the sunlight that they need. 10% of the energy in a trophic level is going to pass up to the next trophic level. So 90% of that energy is going to be lost. And it's not exactly lost. It is going to be consumed. It's going to be used. And that is going to be specifically for keeping the body warm, for digestion, for all the processes and things that that organism does every day. So you have 100% energy down here at the producer's level. So 10% of that energy is going to pass up to the next level. So you've got 100 kilocalories here. So 10% of that is going to pass to the next level. So you're going to have 10 kilocalories. And then 10% of that is going to pass to the next level. So you've got 1 kilocalorie. So you have only 10% of the energy available going from one trophic level to the next. Autotrophs are going to be producers. They're organisms that can go through photosynthesis and are able to produce their own food. So autotrophs are going to be the base of any ecological pyramid, of any trophic level pyramid. You're going to have the producers at the bottom. Population density independent and population density dependent are two terms that refer to limiting factors. So when you have natural catastrophes like tornadoes, these are going to be occurring independent of the population size. So it doesn't matter how many organisms live in that area. If you have a natural catastrophe that's going to occur, like a wildfire, it's going to happen and it's going to spread, and it doesn't matter how many organisms are using this forest as their habitat. And disease is going to be an example. It's one of the best examples of population density dependent limiting factors, because infectious disease can spread really easily in areas where you have a high population density. And that's because those organisms are coming in contact with one another really frequently, and so they're able to transmit that infectious disease.